friend, colleague, associate of mine, a guest who's been on the podcast as well a number of times, Peter Cox, once told me, you will stay the same if it's not for the people you meet and the books you read. And I suppose in essence, what he was trying to communicate there was, if you don't try and get perspective from other sources or other people, essentially you'll live in your own little world and you'll never experience change, and you'll never experience other people's opinions and be receptive to their input. Not only in business, I should qualify, in life in general. It's really hard though to find those people. You know, I'm the first person to say be careful who you listen to, which is why I try and find amazing guests to come on the show, because I know for the better part that may well not be me. But in this instance, you know, you guys are quite lucky, because I've managed to get a gentleman to come on the show today who is certainly someone that has been around the block and has a large amount of wisdom under his belt. Now, wisdom comes in many forms, and I suppose if you've had somebody that, you know, runs a successful business, that's one thing. But today you're going to be hearing from somebody who's an accomplished author, who has presented TED Talks all over the world on numerous occasions, runs many successful businesses, now heads up a global charity, and has some amazing insight, not only into a realm of business, but into the realm of life. This was an absolutely wonderful discussion, and I'm sure you guys are going to get a lot out of it. There's a huge takeaway here, guys, in the sales process side of things, and I'm sure it's going to be a bit of a penny drop moment for a lot of you. But I know you'll enjoy this show, and I can't wait to hear your comments and feedback on it, so enjoy. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Paul Dunn, welcome to the Site Shed podcast.
Well, Matt, it's a thrill to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I suppose we should pay tribute to the man that introduced us. I know he's a podcast listener.
Oh, yeah, Bryn, exactly.
Bryn,
yes.
yeah.
He's what I would call, and I'm sure he's listening right now, but he's what I would call a deep plumber. By that, I don't mean he goes, to enormous depths to fix...
Up to his elbows.
Yeah, exactly. But he thinks about business in a very interesting way. And yeah, so that's how I met him, and then through him I met you, which is really cool.
He's one of the, what I like to call plumberpreneurs out there.
There you go. A new group, a new sub-niche.
Exactly. Anyway, Paul, we got introduced through one of the organisations that you are associated with. I guess you're like a part owner or something. B1G1. Just let's, before we get started, I suppose, give us a bit of background of you. I know you've done multiple TED Talks. I know you've written books, and as I said offline, you're a bit of a celebrity, and so it's kind of it's good to get people with such amazing status on board, you know.
Well, there you go.
Give us a bit of your story.
Well, it's always challenging to do a bit, because when you realise how old I am, the bit is a long bit. So let me give you the really brief one. I'm supposed to have one of these hero journeys, where you come from a poor family, and my family was poor, by the way, but, and then you have all these struggles along the way, and wow, look at me now sort of thing. But I think most of those are invented after the event. So in my case, I think it was just a story of getting lucky. I was born in the United Kingdom. When I was 21, I got headhunted to become one of the first 10 in Hewlett-Packard in Australia. So that meant I was hanging out with, Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard and learning so much from them. And then I created one of Australia's first computer companies, and then way back when, before you were born, I reckon. And then I realized that all of us realized we had a calling. And one day I went to a seminar before we actually understood what seminars were. And it was like this revelatory thing for me, because I sort of did this thing, but my God, that's me. That's what I was put here to do. And so I literally that day sold the computer company, and that was kind of interesting. And decided that I would speak around the world, and well, I said just speak. I mean, if someone would give me pie and peas, I would speak, right? But fortunately, that really took off. And as you and I are talking today, I think the estimate is that something like 226,000 people, benefiting from all of those things that we created. And then I was actually had 23,000 way back before these were sort of interesting numbers, 23,000 business owners to whom we were doing, all of the marketing. And that included, not surprisingly, a lot of traders and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I sold all of that in the year 2000. And you can probably guess from my voice that this was hard. Someone close to me, let's just put it that way, said, I want more of you, and so you need to retire. And I said, yes, darling. It was fun. But that was not for me, I got to tell you. And 3 years afterwards, I just had to get back in, although I was under all sorts of legal restraints and stuff. Yeah. And then a quick story, nearly there, in 2007, all of us have moments, right? And I had this moment where I realized there was more to business than I had actually thought. Up until that point, if you would have said to me, what is business all about? I would have said, well, it's all about, adding enormous value to the people that you're privileged to serve, and it's about having fun doing it. Those are my two things. You'll notice that money wasn't in there, and that's probably a huge omission on my part. But anyway, there was one event where I realized, oh my God, there's something else here. Mm-hmm. And that was when I realized that I was one of the 2% people who won the birth lottery. And, that there were people, there were opportunities for us to do really fabulous things in the world. And that was where B1G1 came into operation. And so now that's a great part of what I do. And that's how I met Bryn and how I met you. Yeah.
And so we'll jump into B1G1 in a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit, I suppose, about the TED Talks that you've done in the past, what you were talking about? And I suppose, I know you've authored some books as well. I'd love to hear about, some of the things that you like to focus your energy on these days, either from stage or on paper.
Yeah. Well, most of my books and indeed TED Talks and videos and all that kind of stuff were on something I created way back in 1992, which was this whole philosophy was called Towards Awesome Service. And what it was doing was looking at the tiny, tiny things that actually make a difference in business. And, that continues to today. I mean, just yesterday, I did a whole series of videos on what I called 1% better. And the idea of that is, that if you imagine, Matt, that, yesterday I was a 1, just for the sake of discussion, a number 1 on something, and I'm going to get 1% better. So that means I'm 1.01 today, right? Just get the maths. Yeah. But 1%, which doesn't seem very much, but if I keep doing that, for a year, and you play with the compounding of that, you go 1.01 times, or raised to the 365th power, which is 37.78, I happen to know, times better, right, than it was. And so these little tiny things are so important. And the reason they're great for business is because they are so tiny, they cost nothing for you to do, but they have a huge impact, a huge return, if that makes sense, which seems to me like a great deal, be able to do something that costs you nothing, but instantly produces you a very large result.
I've read a number of books over the years which sort of subscribe to similar philosophies. I don't know if you've read The One Thing by, I think it's Ray Keller, I think is his name. Is that it?
Yeah. The
similar sort of idea. Yeah. And essentially it's about, I suppose, just doing the small things that add up to the big result. And although it's, a lot of people sort of associate that with a business mentality or approach. It's pretty much a metaphor for life, isn't it? It's like,
it is. Someone said, how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So it's interesting. In some of the work I do, I ask people. This is interesting. In an audience of business owners, right? I will ask them to imagine something, and very frequently I happen to use plumbers. Actually, I actually use plumbers, and so I say, okay, so think about plumbers for a minute. right? And let's talk to the person next to each other. Go ahead and talk about your experience. How do you feel about, dealing with plumbers? And then let me zip around the room. So what are you feeling? And always, I'm not kidding you, always at least 80% of the audience says, well, I don't feel good about it. Seriously, they say that. And then you go, so why is that? And you say, well, they don't turn up on time. And I'm serious, that is the biggest issue. And so if you think about that, and by the way, this is not about plumbers. I mean, people install Foxtel, the same, same thing, right? It's about doctors who keep you waiting. It's all of that kind of stuff. So, and again, it's obvious, but it's these obvious things that we miss. So one of the things that I will do, and I'm sure you kind of play with it as well, where, I use odd times, because if I say to someone, people typically say, things like, they told me they would turn up on Monday, but they forgot to tell me which Monday. Right? Or something like that. Or this stupid idea about, well, I can't tell you what time I'll be there because I got all of that sort of stuff, right? I know that's challenging to do. But one of the things that we found is that when let's talk traders, when they use odd times, it changes everything. Just a very simple change. So, for example, if someone says, well, I'll be there at 1 o'clock, the problem is that 1 o'clock doesn't mean 1 o'clock anymore. It kind of means roughly. Right. 1 o'clock. So you get there like 7 minutes after 1, let's say, but the other person was figuring, you'd be there at 1. So straight away there's a trust issue. Mm-hmm. And by the way, what some people are kind enough to say, sorry, I'm late. By the way, you should never say that. You should always say, thank you for your patience. By the way, the reason I was late was, right? So don't just get into the sorry. And we found tradespeople, seriously. So the times I recommend are not, you don't say, I'll see you at 1:27 and a half. What you say is, I'll be there at 1, or, something after you go like 1:10 or 1:20, 1:40. Notice not 1:30, not 1:15, and 1:50. And people go, oh my goodness, that's really interesting. And then one particular trades guy in New Zealand, he was celebrated as the business of the year in New Zealand. Seriously, he was. And so they were interviewing him, right, in Christchurch, and the TV station says, so what's the secret, Bryce, right? And Bryce says, well, ever since I met Paul, I turn up at odd times. And he says, what's really interesting is, and this guy's a landscape guy, right? And he says, what's really interesting, we have people standing in the driveway checking whether we will be on time. And of course we are. And it just changes everything. It just changes everything, because then the level of trust is bigger and so on and so forth.
So what's the shift there? I don't really follow. Like if you say I'm going to be there at 10 past 1 or I'll be there at 1.
Oh, okay. Why is that the shift? Great question. Sorry. Well, 1 o'clock doesn't mean anything, right? It means like approximately 1. That's why. But 1:10, the brain hears it differently. Oh,
gotcha.
1:10. And you will actually get it. That's why when you and I can take flights, not that we can do that right now, but if you think about the flights that you take, most all of them are at odd times. And that's because the airlines understand behavioral economics, which means that if they say it's leaving at 1:07, and by the way, don't go making appointments at 1:07. Make them 1:10, 1:20, 1:40, 1:50, right? Then people kind of will get there, and therefore they'll take off with a full airplane. So
interesting.
It's that kind of, it is. It's really.
Do you think that is relevant to things like we're doing now? Say I send out a calendar link to you and you can book in a time that suits your schedule according to what's available. But typically speaking, all those booking slots are round numbers. And I know a lot of the guys now, especially, in the wake of and in the thick of this whole coronavirus situation around the world that are listening and watching, like they're in similar situations where they're doing a lot of remote meetings with their clients and a lot of their team. So they're booking meetings all the time. Typically it's through a calendar though. Is it the same mentality or is it not so much?
Yeah. There are some calendars that won't allow you to do this, but many will. So but when you book meetings with me, for example, the meetings are all set up as, 1:10, 1:20, and by the way, it all overlaps, so, and I will always schedule, instead of half an hour meetings, I'll always schedule 20 minutes, but leave myself time just in case I want to run over. Right. So the meeting schedules will always go 1:10, right? 1:40, then the next hour it'll flip to, and then 150, next hour it'll flip to 50, to 20, 40, 50, all of those sorts of things. And funny thing when, because there are two most used words or used phrases these days, aren't they? Because we're spending so much time on Zoom. One of them is "you're on mute." That's probably the biggest one that's used. But interestingly, I don't have to wait. The people are there. And in fact, the people who I'm used to talking with, if I'm like, a minute late, I get an email saying, "Are you okay?" And it's just, and I think what happens is human nature. It's how you do that is how you do everything. So, for example, with the tradespeople again, that timing is really important. And we have people that say things like, "By the way, if we're not there on time, then we will pay you for every minute that we're late, up to a maximum of $300." Right? So the trust level goes up. And then, the next one is the next biggest frustration, if you like, is this whole thing of when you ask a general audience, well, people don't clean up after themselves. That sort of thing. It's these kind of quote unquote soft skills that determine how well people see you as what you do, right? They presume that you're going to know how to, do the tradie thing, but it's the other stuff around that really makes them feel great. And by the way, that's how you get premium prices as well.
Yeah, it's interesting as well. I think today we live and lucky to live in an environment where, like, a lot of those things, technology can
help you, enormously.
Do the heavy lifting on it. I mean, I'll use calendar bookings as an obvious one, but a lot of these job management and project management softwares that the guys are using out there, and kudos to you guys that are using that. And if you're not, you should be. But having some sort of technology in place, which, if not notifies your customer when you're going to be there to the minute and has some sort of tracking capability, certainly notifies you on what time you need to be at the customer's house so that you're always there on time. Because I agree with you, that's the worst thing. And even this week, and I always find it funny because I'm quite heavily in the trade space from an education perspective. And like when I have bad experiences with tradespeople, they freaking well know about it because I make sure. I'm still waiting. I've got a builder called me on Monday saying, "I'll call you tomorrow and let you know the time we're coming this week." It's Thursday now. We haven't received a call and I haven't heard it from the builder. And I'm thinking, this is, to be honest, a typical, experience for a lot of people, which kind of drags the industry down, to be fair, and which is completely unfair to a lot of the guys out there. And we're preaching to the choir. So obviously people that are watching and listening to this are, we're preaching to the converted, but,
And you talk about technology, and then sometimes that technology actually hurts. I well remember, let's see, when was this? 2007. And here's this guy who's an electrician. And someone was offering to coach this guy. And he said, "Well, how much is it?" And, there's a whole thing around that. But anyway, so the guy said, "Look, let me spend a day with you. And I'm going to tell you whether or not I'm going to help you." So this coach goes and spends a day with the electrician. At the end of the day, the electrician says, "So what do you reckon?" He says, "Well, I think I could add hundreds of thousands of dollars to your business in the first year." And the trader goes, "Oh, that's not true." He says, "Well, yeah, it is." He says, "But there's a deal. I'm going to make a deal." He says, "The deal is that you give me your phone right now. You just give me your phone. And I will get your phone answered for you. In fact, I'll do it for the first month. And you're not even going to have access to your phone other than when I call you. It's another phone, I'm going to call you." And because, think about that just for a minute, because here's the electrician, right? And he's got his mobile phone there and he's, doing his Ohm's law stuff or whatever else it is. And all of a sudden the phone rings. What's the first thing that happens? The first thing that happens, watch my eyes. The first thing that happens, go, so now it picks up the phone call. It's like, "Oh, yeah. Can you, I'll give you the quote when I get home." Bang, down goes the phone, right? So, and if you think about that and you think about how could I use technology so that I can be productive and at the same time I can deal with the customer in a different way, all of a sudden you get masses. By the way, the number for that particular guy was hundreds of thousands of dollars, in fact, greater than $500,000 in the first year alone. So, and it's just an example of a little thing that we get used to doing, but we don't think about the implication of it.
And this is a conversation that has come up regularly in the group and with clients of mine. And only this morning I was talking to a client of mine who says, oh, whenever the phone rings, I always answer it. To which I said, that's ridiculous. You should be doing the work that people are paying you to be on site to be doing instead of answering the phone 100%. Calls. And anyway, this is a common conversation because people, the regular feedback I get is, well, if I don't answer the phone call, I don't get the job, to which I normally say bullshit. And the other one is, well, nobody can offer, like, can answer the questions like I can, to which I normally also say bullshit as well. But like, I think fundamentally there's like, guys get caught in this way of thinking and this, this mental mindset problem where they think that, they're the only ones that can do this. And to be fair, until their thinking changes, they're right. They are, because there's so much technology and resource around there which can help, remove them from those medial tasks in the business that are stopping them from being productive and, serving the customer better. And imagine it, and from a customer's point of view, if you're on the job and you've come to, fix my tap washers or whatever, and I'm talking to you and your phone rings and you go and answer it, like you've essentially just said to the person that you're doing the work for, well, this phone call is more important than this time I'm spending with you right now.
Of course you have. And if you're doing things by, the hour, which is another whole discussion. I mean, we could spend 5 or 6 podcasts talking about whether or not you should do that.
Yeah.
Then, they go, oh, the meter's ticking over, that sort of thing. And by the way, for those of you who still answer your phone, the reality is that the person who actually would answer it for you would, in all honesty, do a better job than you do. And I don't mean to, put you down in that. I just know from experience, there's a major, I won't mention the name, major tire retailer in Australia. I'm inclined to mention the name, but I won't, where the guy's fixing it, but we're answering, yeah, so could you tell me the price on, an XYZ? Oh, yeah, it's $300, boom, down goes the phone. And just by changing that, at the end of 5.5 weeks, a 40% increase in their business.
Wow.
Just by changing that.
So
these things are right in front of us and we just don't see them. That's the problem.
I mean, I know even when I was plumbing and managing projects and things like that. I mean, your phone rings when you're in the middle. You just sit down to do something, especially when you're, on the project guys and the builders out there will be nodding their head and agreeing with this, because it's like as soon as you actually get set up to do something, the phone rings and then you just feel like you never get back to it. At the end of the day, you've got this room set up ready to go, and you come back at the end of the day, pack it up. You haven't done a bloody thing because all you've done is open boxes and answer phone calls, and it's insane. But I mean. But that's the reality. A lot of the guys are out there thinking, well, no, but I need to answer this call because if it's a builder and I don't answer it, then I'm not going to get the job. And I'm like, you've been working for this guy for 20 years. Like, of course you're going to get the job. Like, I'm sure he'd be happier to see you completing work instead of answering your phone calls. But I think what happens as well, and this sort of ties into mindset, we start thinking like this, and then we train our clients to expect things like this, right? So then all of a sudden, the clients are like, well, no, I call you and you answer. That's how this relationship works. And unfortunately, that's like you've dug your own grave there to a degree. So then you've got to go down that path of retraining clients on different process. And I've only just done this yesterday, I should add, like with some of our support tickets. Like we work with so many companies now, and the support ticketing side of things is an ever evolving, I won't say struggle, but struggle. And you've got to improve these things, and it involves process. And some people don't like it, but at the end of the day, it's you have to do these things, and you've got to make things flow better. Like that's what it's all about. It's optimizing.
Oh, it absolutely is, and yeah, I mean, but it's also, but think about it another way too, because when that tradie, the electrician who took the calls, and then we took the phone off him, right? I mean, think the way he's doing. Oh yeah, well, I'll get onto the quote tonight. So now, you go home and bang, you got your evening's shot as well. So and all of a sudden we think, oh, business is really stressful because that's the way it has to be done. Well, it's not the way it has to be done, and business should be a joy doing what you do. Really should.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, the great thing about what you're doing, Matt, is that you help people see that. And I'm sure there are so many people listening to us now going, yay, he does, right?
So there's a lot of, as our community grows and evolves, and as we get these amazing new business owners that come in from all over the world. There's like something like 6,000, global trade business owners that are part of the community.
Awesome.
And they've all got their own experiences, good or bad. And mind you, there's nothing wrong with bad experiences as long as you can learn something from them.
As long as you learn from them, yeah.
Right. So, but like some of the conversations there, are taken very constructively from peers. And I find, and I don't know, like I only have a young child, so it's probably not relevant to me, but I don't know if you've got children yourself. My dad always used to say to me, I'll tell you things over and over again, and you would never do it until someone else tells you exactly the same thing and you go and do it. And I feel like it's kind of, sometimes it's like that in business, you can hear so many things so often from one certain avenue, and then all of a sudden you hear it from somewhere else and it's like, bang, oh, that makes sense. Why don't I do that? And I've done it myself. I do it myself.
Yes. Yes. No, it's so true. It's so true. Yeah. And that's that's fundamentally, isn't it? That's what makes it interesting. But it also makes it kind of interesting to realize that even though we might think right now that we're at the max, if you like, in terms of performance, the reality is, going back to those little 1% things, that, no. There's so many little things here, particularly now, that can add to your business very significantly. Not just add to your business, but add to your life as well.
Well, exactly. And I mean, one of the big focuses for us over the last couple of years has been both for my business and for, helping clients and listeners and viewers and part of our community, is understanding how important structure is from like an organizational point of view. Because there's so many guys out there, and I've been there myself, and I'm sure you were there as well at one point, where you just feel like you're doing everything because you are doing everything. You're the call taker, you're the accountant, you're the salesperson, you're the dispatcher, you're everything, right? And until you can understand that in order to free some time up for yourself, you need to process those roles and responsibilities and train people to do it your way, and you can step out of that role and you can focus on the other things that you need to be doing, and that's
exactly
it's pretty much the only way. It's made a formidable change to my businesses, but I know a lot of our guys out there are the same. They've been able to apply some of these principles through organizational structure, and all of a sudden they're like, I don't have to work Fridays anymore, or I can, drop the kids at school in the morning, and all of a sudden they've got their mornings back, and it's just through making a small, like you said, like little bite-sized changes on a journey they're already on,
Yeah, and sometimes it's a little more than that too. Because we get locked into, the things that always used to be that way. Right. So as for example, I was dealing with a plumber again recently in, what's the name of the place? Guernsey, in the Channel Islands, right?
Okay.
And this guy's name is Darren. And we were on a call, and he's saying, God, he said, I'm getting killed. And I said, what's happening? He said, well, people, they make these, he said, we kind of know, but, they're kind of calls where they're checking out what we say. So they'll say something to us like, so look, I got this problem. I need to fix my toilet. How much are you going to be for that? And we say, well, it's, so much per hour, whatever that thing is. And then they take that. We know it's the competitor. They take that, and then all of a sudden we get killed in the marketplace because we might be charging, 40 euros or whatever they charge in Guernsey per hour. And so all they've got to do is say, oh, yeah, we're 23, Mrs. Jones, and all of a sudden, bang, the business goes out of the door. So you start to think of that, and you go, well, hang on a second, is there a different way? Yes, there is a different way. Why would you not do it very differently and not even worry about the hourly rate? Why would you not do it another way? And in his particular case, that's exactly what happened. So when he would take the call, in fact, it wasn't him that was taking the call, but when his team were taking the call, it would go like this. So Mrs. Jones would say, yes, I need my toilet fixed. Can you tell me how much it is? And he would say, well, yes, Mrs. Jones, based on, by the way, can I just ask you a couple of questions to help you best? Yes. So what's the type of this? What's this? And he'll say, okay, well, that's going to be X dollars, whatever it is, right? And then he would say, and that includes a number of very special things. Now, have a guess what Mrs. Jones says at that point. Mrs. Jones says, oh, like what?
Like what?
Special things are they? Oh, well, Mrs. Jones, glad you asked, because when we give you the time to, that we're going to be there, by the way, we will be there at that time. And if we're not, then, this will happen. Not only that, we do this and this and this and this and this, whatever those extra things are. And they're not extra things. They're just the things that nobody else talks about. That's the difference, right? That's the only difference. And then Mr. Jones goes, oh, yeah, that's fine. Bang. No discussion about, this rate is cheaper than that and this rate is cheaper than that. It's bang. Because what the customer wants, and obviously there are exceptions to this, but typically what we need to understand that the customer wants is certainty. That's what they want. Right. They want certainty, and through that certainty, but which, by the way, comes from structure as well. Mm-hmm. The moment they see you've got a structure, they can become trusting of that. So trust and certainty, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, let's do that. As opposed to, the typical thing with quoting, for example, is, well, yeah, look, I'll think about that and I'll give you a call back. That's not going to happen. That, some other guy's going to get interrupted and all of that kind of stuff. So again, and the methodology by which you do that is very, very, very important. But again, little thing, major outcome change.
Yeah, I know it's interesting, I suppose, like in the beginning of this whole COVID thing when, businesses here in Australia went into lockdown, all around the world went into lockdown and forced lockdown, martial law. And,
no, don't reveal any preferences there.
But there was a lot of guys were sort of, freaking out about it. And then a lot of guys, rightfully so, saw it as an opportunity to, I suppose, segment themselves from competition,
yes.
And the big issue the issues that we're trying to solve at that point, which, to be fair, are kind of issues that you're always trying to solve as a business trying to sell or promote a product or a service to a potential customer, is you're trying to, mitigate risk and reduce fear. And, when a customer comes, when you try working for a client, like they have apprehensions, whether they voice them or not, and concerns, and it's your job to kind of, if you can be proactive in trying to reduce those or address those before they get to them, then, you've got a much better chance of getting your foot in the door.
Absolutely right. It's all about building that relationship and building the connection. I think that actually business is all about, really two things, but one of them that is really easy to do, and that is it's about connection. It really is about connection. It's not about sales and marketing. It's just connection. Yep. And the extent to which we can connect with people and therefore build the trust is hugely related, as you know, to the revenues and the profitability of your business.
And you know what? And we've spent years, and anyone that listens to this podcast is sick to death of me talking about it, but like exactly what you just said, building trust and rapport through connection. And like, instead of being always front and present as the guy trying to ram a sales down someone, it's about being the guy who's there trying to help and educate. And so we are so proactively investing in frameworks and tools and programs to help, trade business owners create useful content and share that content with their potential customers, existing customers, strategic partners, so on and so things, because that's like a touch point, which is, first of all, not going to get unsubscribed from. And second of all, it's useful and valuable, which, whether front of mind or back of mind, like the customer sees that and they go, well, this is actually stuff that I'm interested in. It's not like their latest promotion on hot water heaters, which I couldn't give a toss about.
Hallelujah. And as a result of that, the level of trust goes up significantly. And the thing that we need to understand is that no trust equals no sale. It's as simple as that, right?
It's an interesting landscape as well, I suppose, when you come from being a trade business owner. And I say this to guys all the time, like, you're not in the plumbing, building, electrical business anymore. You're in the education space.
You got it.
You are there to educate. And people are coming to you for information. You got to give them information, and then maybe that'll turn into a sale. But if you don't do those steps, very, very rarely will you go from 1 to 3 without 2.
Exactly. So, that's a great way of expressing it. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Isn't it weird? I mean, it's so interesting because this is the first time you and I have spoken in any depth, right? Other than hi, sort of thing. But isn't it interesting that, we talk about the same things, and you're saying, well, we talk about that. And what that makes me think of is that there are these time-honored truths, right? That just, but we tend to forget them, and we forget them at our peril.
I think as well, like, it's like for better or worse, as tradespeople. Well, to be fair, it's not relevant. I mean, that's my space and that's what I know. But I'm sure across any vertical, any profession, they experience similar problems in the space where you can go and train to be a lawyer or an accountant or a doctor or a plumber or a builder or whatever it is, and you get really good at doing that profession. But at no point throughout that process does anyone ever really teach you the skills involved to run a business. And that's a completely different game. You can be the best plumber in the world, but if you don't know how to, promote yourself, and if you haven't got presentable skills, if you can, speak to your customers correctly, and if you have all the invoicing stuff down and you act professionally, you're dead in the water.
Well, I remember in 1990, again, way before you were born, meeting Michael Gerber. In fact, I read, you probably mentioned Michael, and I remember reading Michael's book in December 1990, as in the E-Myth, and I just I got to page 31, I remember it, and I thought, God, he's written this book just for me. It's amazing. And I thought, I'm going to get this guy to come to Australia. And you remember those 23,000 business owners that I was talking about. And so I went to the back of the book, this is how long it goes, and there was a fax number. Remember the days of faxes? And I faxed him. Seriously, I faxed him. And, and eventually out he came in the February of 1991, and it was just amazing. But, Michael always used to, his big thing was, work on the business rather than in it. And one of the things he used to say, when he would get on stage, he would say, are there any hairdressers in the room, right? And people would say, oh, yeah, I'm a hairdresser. And he would say, do you own the business? And he said, and then he would look at them directly, because Michael, if you've ever been in an audience with Michael, the air does get blue a little time, and I'm not about to do that. But anyway, so Michael would look at him, and he would say, so wait there, you're a hairdresser and you own the business, is that right? So, and they'd say, yeah. He would say, well, let me just look you straight in the eye. He would say it differently than that, but he would say the worst person to build a hairdressing business, and then notice the way he's saying it, the worst person to build a hairdressing business is a hairdresser. And they go, whoa. And it's no, because you see, you will always default to cutting the hair rather than thinking about how I can build a business where other people can do that. Do you see what I mean? And so... And you're so right. It's just because you necessarily have the technical skill, which you've worked hard and everything else to do, it doesn't necessarily guarantee success out there in the marketplace.
And I think it certainly ties back heavily to that conversation around understanding your organisational structure, because I know for a lot of the guys, and we run these awesome events all over the world, surfing and skiing events and all these cool things. And when I run through these topics with guys at the events, they sort of think, oh my God, I've just realised that I'm the head of my finance department and I suck at numbers, or I'm the head of customer support and I hate people. And then you think, and it's like a revelation penny drop for them, because they're like, so hang on a minute, all I need to do is train someone on how to do this, and I can spend all of my time out on the job managing the projects, which is what I'm good at. And then it's like, all of a sudden, bang. And then that's, it's amazing. And, one of the guests who we had on the show recently, Darren, he's been on the show a couple of times, but he runs an extremely successful cabinetry business on the northern beaches of Sydney, and awesome guy, good buddy of mine. And he sent a couple of his guys to a workshop recently where we did in Japan, where we built out org charts, and we were talking about org charts. And he came back, actually before the show, he said, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, that last workshop in Japan, the guys came back, they did some work on the org chart, we brought some guys in, and the business has grown 20%. And I was like, okay. So it's quite interesting, these little things that people sort of think is insignificant. All of a sudden it's like, oh, by the way, it did this. And you're like, yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, well, I love the words you're using around that. You're the owner of a business that does this rather than you are that. I think that's a very interesting distinction.
I think we have another distinction as well, a relief as well for a lot of the guys out there is, you don't necessarily have to be the CEO, or you don't have to be
you don't. You do not. No, that's true.
And I think that was a big shift for me, because I was like, well, I know for sure I'm not a GM. I'm not GM material, like I'm the sort of director with the ideas and all this kind of stuff. But I want people around me that can implement these things and cut through the crap, and it's okay to be like that. If you understand that's your role in the business, then it makes it a lot easier to deliver on and a lot easier to hire people and bring people into those positions to fill that void. So you get that little ecosystem, gelling. So,
yeah, there's this concept, isn't there, of flow, which is like doing that which you really enjoy and everything else. And, if you don't enjoy the finance stuff, then don't do the finance stuff, because why would you batter yourself to death doing that, right? Just get in the groove as to what you do and then find other people to do it. And yes, use the organisation chart to find the people who love to do that better than you. Or now, of course, you can outsource that, which is really easy.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. I mean, I suppose we've been chatting for quite a while now, and I'm conscious of the time you're investing. Thank you very much. But I'd love to hear a little bit about the more recent initiative with B1G1, something I recently came on board with.
Well, you're now it, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And again, shout out to Bryn for the intro there. But I mean, for me, I've kind of been looking at a way for my businesses to sort of give back to society, community, whatever. But to be honest, it's really hard. Like looking at all these different, charities and causes and things around, and then knowing what you know and what you hear about all these, these charities that, give such a small actual portion of the money to the charity, and the rest of it goes to the director's Lamborghini fund or whatever.
That's the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's quite I think a lot of people out there, to be fair, would be thinking similar to me. Well, I'd love to be able to give something back to a cause that I know is actually legit and trustworthy. And I was actually stoked to stumble across B1G1 because, it didn't take, I think it was one conversation. I was like, sign me up, let's go. So
you were, like I got it at Hello, I think it was where you were. By the way, that occurs to me, one thing occurs to me too, because of Zoom, I use, someone said the other day, well, look, you're in this bloody lounge room here.
Yeah, right? I can see them. I can see the background shit.
No. I mean, I'm actually in a forest, right? So, yeah. So, and that is actually my view right here in from the condo in Singapore where I am. But yeah, it is. But no, the whole concept of B1G1 is very simple, and we're so glad you're here, by the way. And Bryn, again, shout out to Bryn, is this whole concept, which comes back again to connection, right? So the whole concept is, wouldn't it be a great world if every time business was done that something great happened? So think about that, right, for a minute. Wouldn't it be a great world if, whenever, for example, in my case, whenever I send an email, very simple, a kid gets access to education. And that's not about me, going, wow, look at me. What it is saying is, remember that whole thing about the 2% birth lottery, and remember what Matt just said about it being difficult. You've got to go and find this charity and go find that charity. Well, in B1G1, there are something like 600 projects, and they're high impact projects. And so you can link your business activities to whatever, to these projects. So, if you're a plumber, you might want to say when the quote is accepted, or when the job is done, you might want to give them a little note after the event that says, thank you, Mrs. Jones. It was so thrilling to, or you may not use those words, but it was good to be able to complete that job on time. And just to celebrate that, we thought you'd love to know that as a result of you getting us to do that, 57 kids just got access to water. Thank you very much. And think about the impact on Mrs. Jones. And by the way, I need to say, this is not about you going, that's absolutely not what it's about. It's about you feeling even better about what you do, right? And I spoke with a guy not that long ago who's had this really successful business, and he said, but I've got a problem. I said, what's the problem? He said, there's no meaning or purpose anymore. It's become all about the money. And I think we all reached that stage, and hopefully some earlier than others. And so B1G1 unlocks that whole thing and allows you to link, as I said before, your simple business activities to doing something great. And you choose that. And by the way, to illustrate or to comment on your point, when you do that in B1G1, fully 100% of your giving goes where you want it to go. So there's nothing comes off the top. We don't make anything out of it. It's, it's really beautiful to see. And I think that right now we are at something like 211 million giving impacts. And all of that started, just to circle back to where we started this, it's these tiny little things that make major difference. And the Masami, who co-founded this with me, she had that simple idea. Wouldn't it be great if that happened? And so it's a little tiny thing, but now look where it goes. And so I think it's also a metaphor for how we can build great businesses as well.
Yeah, it's great. And I suppose if you guys want more information on that, the website's b1g1.com. And by the time this podcast goes live, you'll actually be able to see how I've got it set up too. So if you head across to the site shed, you'll see something. Paul's going to help me with that, hopefully, because I haven't done anything yet.
Yes, he is. He is.
Yeah, no, just so you can kind of cross-relate it back to maybe how yours might look for your business, you can head across to tradiewebguys.com.au or the siteshed.com, and you can just sort of see how we're going to do it there, because it's maybe slightly different to what you guys might do as tradespeople, but you certainly get the picture anyway. And from what I've seen so far, it's pretty darn easy to set up.
Oh, very easy. Yeah, very easy. It's so beautiful. We even have a kid, I think I mentioned this the other day. This woman, she joined B1G1, and it was telling her family about it. And on the Saturday night after she joined, and what happened was she says, okay, David, her 10-year-old son, David, your turn to do dishwashing. And David goes, oh, God, I'm going to do dishwashing again. And she said, well, what about if we find a different way of doing that? And she was a little familiar with B1G1. And so she simply set up a little giving story, which says, she's talking with David about it, right? David, look at this. Well, I can set it up so that when you do the dishes, what do you think? Would it be kids getting education, or would it be kids getting water, or should we plant trees? What should we do? And he said, oh, well, dishes, water, why don't we give 10 kids access to water? And, oh, look at that. It only costs 10 cents to do. And then he says to his mum, will you pay the 10 cents, or am I going to take it from my pocket money? So anyway, and now, this lady, Sylvia, she called me about this. This was like in March she did this. And just a couple of days ago, here we are in July, and she said, not been an issue with dishwashing. So kids get it, right? They really do. Yeah. And we old people sometimes, or older people, sometimes need to just take a moment to pause and just go, wow, that's pretty interesting. Just from the great things that I do in my business, great things can happen in my world, and I can be, or in the world, and I can be in control of that. It's really a powerful thing.
No, I love it. It's a great initiative. So kudos to getting it up and running. And
thank you.
Thank you from the globe. Hey, mate, we better wrap this up. We're getting on a bit here, and it's getting a bit late in the day for you, I'm sure. I'd appreciate very much the time and the conversation. This has been
Matt, it's been fantastic. Great. Thank you. No, and, none of us knew where it would go, I should say, but I think it went interesting places. And for those of you who've been listening to it, I hope it was valuable for you too. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I dare say there'll be plenty of conversations that come out off the back of this, especially with what we spoke about in relation to the time thing and the selling thing. And
there's lots more.
And so we may have to call on your expertise again at some point.
It'll be fun. No, it's fun. It's fun to be able to talk about it. And, and the guys listening to us now, they're doing important work. And I think we need to support that. So in any way that I can, I'd be happy to be back.
Lovely. All right, folks, that's a wrap.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com, where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from this show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.